Great, so we're going to get started. Thanks for joining us at our first ever International Women's Day panel. I'm Huiyi Lin, Executive Director of Sustainability and Agricultural Impact at Pinduoduo. Pinduoduo is China's largest online agricultural platform. We have over 700 million users, and we're actively trying to build a more efficient food system through technology to benefit our consumers and farmers. And that's the motivation behind our interest in agri and food tech. Now, this year's International Women's Day theme is Choose to Challenge. And we basically wanted to challenge the notion that agri-food is a boring or old sector, or that it only involves a very narrow group of people. So we chose to try to spotlight the diversity of women in agri-food tech by inviting people from the science, with a more finance, innovation background, as well as the arts. Right, so we don't just need the scientists who bring the cutting edge technology. We also need entrepreneurs, right? We need backers to partner and work together with these startups to bring them to life, to bring them to consumers. And of course, we need people to communicate, right? And connect that with the wider population. So today we're very honored to have a fantastic panel of 3 very diverse women working in the agri-food tech sector. And we'll kick things off with a moderated panel discussion before we take questions from the audience. And if you have to drop off, don't worry, we are recording this session and the recording will subsequently be shared on our social media. So without further ado, I'll now get our panelists to tell us about who they are, what they do, and why they are doing what they do. So, to kick us off, I'll start with Ilanit. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much, Sini, for this invitation. Very, very happy to be here in a panel which is really crossing the globe. So I'm Ilanit, I'm based in Israel. I've been in the innovation space for about 20 years. So my whole career has to do with only innovation, very, very narrowed, yet very wide, because that's the topic we're talking about. What I've been doing across the years is mainly building innovation divisions within corporates. At the beginning, it was more about building internal innovation units. I did that in Nestle, and then I did that in Dole, and then building what used to be called as open innovation, and now it is called as venturing, meaning the relationship with the startups in the ecosystem. And been doing this again with Nestle, later with Dole. I've built Dole Ventures, and doing now for the 6th time doing this with Novozymes. It's actually the first time that I am sharing this with the crowd that I joined Novozymes, and now we're building the venturing arm for the Novoprotein division, which is a new division by Novozymes. I've been also one of the founders of the Israeli ecosystem, which is now known across the agri-food sector, the agri-food worldwide. And my primary motivations, I don't think it is, can be summarized into one, is first my own curiosity. That's something that is very personal. And on the other side, the will really to change, to improve the agri-food value chain, which I think that as a person, as a woman, as a mother, as a person in this world, food is really important for us, and it is already known and acceptable, and that the current system is not working well. I have the honor to be part of a whole huge group of people that is helping and improving the system.
Great, and maybe we can have Huiyi go next.
Yes. Okay. I have a couple of slides that I'll share now. Okay. Can you see?
Yep.
Okay. So there are 2 parts to my involvement in food. So one part is in market research, and it's with my platform called Asymmetrics Research. So asymmetrics research really was born of a background of trying to understand the market, how consumers, users, channels work, and the industry, of course, and how the ecosystem correlates with each other. My background is in economics. I worked also in public policy in the Singapore Ministry of Trade Industry. And I had 10 years prior of market research experience with companies which dealt with consumer products, agriculture, healthcare, technology. So I set up asymmetrics research last year to bring together these different fields of my experience and trying to be focused on providing customized market research on understanding ecosystems with regards to the markets and society in China and the region. So what we do is that we want to understand, what are the gaps in the system today? And we see really the role of food being at very different levels, both at the individual, family, and up to communities and national levels and international. And really, we do know that it impacts national development goals and global growth, and it also impacts people at the individual and family levels. Again, agriculture, on the other hand, being the providing system for food, also contributes towards the economy and employment, but it also has impact and implications on the way that it is sustainable or not, and impacts the environment. So we really try to understand the ecosystem, how it builds up in the value chain from primary production all the way to it reaches the consumer, and what are the challenges and gaps along the way, and how can we plug these gaps with solutions that are going to be interdisciplinary in nature and pulling together people, different stakeholders in the ecosystem. So for example, we've just launched a white paper in the alternative protein space, focusing on China to understand how this market is growing, how it is expanding, who are the players involved, what are the strategies they're using, and what are the gaps and opportunities in the system. So really how we see food in terms of the growth challenges and goals, ultimately we hope to attain solutions which can push for better safety, security and accessibility for all, and sustainability in the way that it is produced and consumed. And next, going into how we communicate messages, for myself, I'm also a practicing artist, and my artist practice is called Huiyi Lin. We started one of our key projects is on food, and it's called the Poverty Line Project that we started in 2010. I worked with my husband, Stephen Chow, and so the two of us, we formed Huiyi Lin. So this project really uses a key visual like what you see here, to understand what are the food choices within a very limited food budget of somebody living at the poverty line of a country. So it really uses day-to-day food choices as the subject matter. And that, the previous picture was our first key visual that we took in China as our China case study back in 2010. And this is what we took in the United States. We've done this project across different countries around the world, across 36 countries and territories in 6 continents. So really it became a global study of food choices, communicated in a very visual way to show the accessibility of food, also the connectivity of food and how the global food chains are really connected today. For example, here we see eggs from 12 different countries that we traveled to during when we conducted this project. We've also done other projects related to food. For example, here we look at the ecological footprint of fish farming in China. And here we talk about the story of the food chain and how it is cultivated in aquaculture in China. And we do large-scale exhibitions where we present the work in a very big format way so that it really confronts the audience and also allows conversations to happen in a space like this. So this is a exhibition that we did for the Poverty Line Project in Paris. And we also engage in cross-disciplinary conversations and discussions across economics, science, public policy, and international development fields. We found that actually art can also become a platform to bridge conversations, because many a time for myself, when I was working in public policy, a lot of these matters seem to be very high level, and maybe for people working in business, again, it's in a certain sphere of state of mind, and art can actually be a bridge to open up communication channels and facilitate discussions to look at issues in a broader perspective, and raise questions about how our systems are structured today. So we try to do that with the artwork that we do. And as a ending note, I think we are very much motivated by our next generation, how we live our lives today, and how we hope our next generation could have the potential to live their lives. That's really what drives us to do what we do.
Thank you. And over to Sandhya.
Thanks. Happy to be here. I'm Sandhya Sriram, the CEO and co-founder of Shiok Meats. Shiok Meats is a cell-based seafood company. What I mean by that is we make seafood using stem cells, which is better for the environment, better for the animals and human beings. So it's more sustainable. You don't have to set up large-scale shrimp or crab or lobster farms. These are the 3 species that we work with. And we're the only company in Singapore and in the world doing crustacean meat. When we started off 2.5 years ago, August 2018, we were the first ever cell-based meat company in this part of the world, and kind of scratched the surface on food technology for Singapore. And then the government came on board and announced this huge mandate for better food, alternative food and alternative protein in Singapore by 2030. So right now we're still in the R&D phase and looking to commercialize end of 2022, start of 2023. So what we do is we take stem cells and feed them with a liquid nutrient that converts them into the meat that we consume. It's real meat. It's not fake or synthetic or artificial. It tastes, feels, smells the same, has the similar nutritional profile as well. But you don't need to either go into the ocean or set up large-scale farms. Our manufacturing plant basically looks like a brewery with large stainless steel tanks, and instead of beer, it's kind of growing meat or seafood inside. Yeah, so that's me.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing about your exciting work. And I actually wanted to just sort of dive in on, what was your motivation to become a stem cell scientist? So growing up, did you always sort of have a dream in mind to become a scientist? And what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Yeah, so my background is, like you mentioned, I'm a stem cell scientist by education training, but then kind of quit being a scientist 6 years back and took up business development with Agency for Science, Technology and Research. So I learned everything about business on the job. And I'm also a serial entrepreneur. So I have started 2 other tech companies in the past. I think for me, the main challenge was when I started Shiok, people were like, why are you quitting your well-paid job? Your really good, well-paid job. Why you're extremely successful in what you're doing. So why are you taking this leap of faith and this risk in your life? And you're already close to like 35. Why are you doing this? And I said, why not? But everything from, when we started, like I mentioned, we were the only company, and my co-founder is a female as well. She's a stem cell scientist. Her name's Huiyi. And for her, the backlash was, you're a successful scientist. Why are you quitting science and entering entrepreneurship, which is so non-Asian, right? Like, why are you going away from a steady paycheck? So for the both of us, it was kind of giving ourselves about a year to figure out the technology, to push our passion and see if this works out. So I literally had this conversation with Kai when we started the company. We said, let's give ourselves 12 months from today, which was around mid-August. And we said, if you're able to raise about $1 million and we're able to prove that we can take out stem cells from shrimp, and this was never done by anyone else. There's no academic research that talks about taking stem cells out of shrimp. There's no research out there saying you can make meat out of shrimp stem cells. So we both are extremely skilled in our stem cell technology, and we love food. And I've been a vegetarian all my life for ethical reasons. So we put 2 and 2 together, and that's why we started this. So we gave ourselves 12 months, but within the first 4 months, 6 months actually, We managed to, isolate stem cells for sure. We actually had our first shrimp dumpling prototype. We had raised close to $5 million. So that was kind of the trajectory that we had. And we have had people close their doors on our faces saying, what's wrong with you? You're a stem cell scientist, you don't have IP. And in Asia, most of the deep tech companies or biotech companies are generally spin-offs from universities. The research is already done by you for a couple of years. When you're close to commercialization, you spin it off. In our case, we quit our jobs and literally started with nothing, like nothing but a lot of passion, a lot of skill, and $10,000 from an angel investor. And that's all we had. So we were literally like, oh, you're going to fail, you're miserable, you're going to be miserable, you're going to regret what you have done. We've had all of that. But I think we just pushed through, and we're still pushing through.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it's a lot that you've managed to achieve, starting from just $10,000 and having to do all the research yourself, right? So it's like almost doing, like you said, multiple PhDs, especially since nobody had done the work for crustaceans previously. So shifting gears and moving over to Ilanit, right? So representing, I guess, the capital holders. So in your journey, sort of pioneering innovation, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Oh my God, that's such a complicated question. I mean, there's the corporate challenges when you want to move, you want to shift a big multinational into an innovation state of work, right? It's not only, it's a change into the state of mind of the people. And then if you are a woman, I do not need to tell you, Sandhya already mentioned just a little bit in between the lines that it's not so easy when you are the leader of change in the multinational which I was working with. So the challenges are endless, but if I could narrow down what is the biggest challenge, or if I could generalize a bit all of those challenges that has to do with state of mind, economies, people, processes, and all of that, then the challenge I would say would be the fact that organizations, specifically multinationals, find it very difficult to prioritize the future over the present. And then in every decision that the CEO or the business unit leader have in front of his eyes, and that is, here's a product that we're going to launch next month, it's going to give us X money, and here's a product that we can launch in 2 years' time or 3 years' time to give us 5X money, he would prefer, and it's usually a he would prefer the 1X in the near future. And that's because the innovation accounting or the innovation economies were not in organization are not built or structured to prioritize the future. Therefore, they are not built or structured to prioritize the well-being of society, the well-being of the system that we're working in, and the advanced sciences. So in most of the companies, the science is what we call like implementation work, and not like a really advanced R&D that could bring us closer to the better performing agri-food chain. So that's the biggest challenge. And I think, to be on the positive side, on the optimistic side, I think that it is changing. It is changing because what organizations are doing now, they have an understanding, more and more they have this understanding that there is a limit to internal innovation, that growing 2%, 3% per year is just not enough. And you need to go and to push forward more collaborations in order to be able to grow and to create an impact. And food is an impact industry.
That's such a good quote. Food is an impact industry. And now rounding off this question, Huiyi, how about you? What were some of the challenges that you encountered in your journey?
Actually, I'd like to maybe share something on the personal front. So I think I think we have Sandhya and Ilanit also being mothers here. I think balancing also the purpose that we want to create through work and also family commitments, and for myself also in the art field. I think, having too many things on the plate, we're really always too ambitious to try to squeeze more, because we really want to do so much more. And I think at certain times I have experienced, of course, burnout, but I've also been very fortunate that I had the support of family to try to sort it out, prioritize, and then find resources and solutions for that. So I think for kind of reflecting also on the role of women in family, in society, in the community, and in organizations, I think we also have to balance things, and that helps us also to have a kind of a more holistic engagement with the people that we work with and live with.
Great. And I think that's a very real challenge that a lot of people face in the workforce, right? For women especially. So all the roles that you play at home, balancing that with the challenges at work. I'm just curious in terms of, being a mother, how has that changed or maybe influenced your perspective on the agri-food sector? No, maybe Huiyi can start, and I don't know if Sandhya, Ilanit want to chime in later.
Yeah, for me, I think becoming a mother, for me, I kind of also learned from my mother's ways in trying to care for my family, making a lot of times decisions on what to buy, what to eat, also for my children and ourselves. And I think the becoming a consumer and understanding how the purchase decision for a family works, I become a subject myself, right? And so I'm looking out for food safety, I'm looking out for assurance on the quality, on the nutritional value, and how it's going to be safe and good for my children and ourselves. So that's as a consumer. On the other side, I'm also looking at this is the system that we grew up with, but what is our next generation going to have? And we need to start making changes now. We find that the system is broken. How do we use our resources? How do we understand and know where our food is from? I think for me, having grown up in Singapore and later on moving to China, understanding and connecting back into where the food comes from is actually a very important part of my journey. And understand who plants the food, who grows the food, how does it land up on our tables is one part of the connection that I want to make with this industry.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered most of it. I think for me, two things. One is the whole reason behind Shiok is to make the future of food, or the food future per se, sustainable food future, and make sure that my kids and the other kids in the future can actually eat the meat and the seafood that they like, or they're able to see these animals in the ocean and still eat them. So you can actually sit in an aquarium, you can look at the shrimp, but you're still eating shrimp, but it doesn't come from a dead shrimp. So that's kind of the whole movement behind cell-based meat, right? So you enjoy the live animal, but you're still eating the meat, you're enjoying it, but you haven't killed it. So I've had this interesting conversation with my son. I think he was 3 or 4. So my husband and my son do eat meat and seafood, unlike me. It's their choice. But my son used to think that the chicken comes from the restaurant or the supermarket. And then his school basically took him on to a dairy farm and a chicken farm, and he realized that that's how animals are grown and they're slaughtered and then they eat. So when he came to know that, he realized that the meat comes from a dead animal. It didn't really stop him from eating per se, but he goes back and thinks about it, and he's like, is there a better way? And when I started Shiok, he found that there was a better way. So he's pretty excited about what I do. And I think for me, I want to inspire him to go out there and innovate and, find solutions for problems that he sees rather than just sit back and wait for the solutions. So I strive a lot to inspire him every day, even though I spend very less time with him. But, you can't have it all. So I chose career and business over family. Yes, I accept that, because I've had this question asked so many times. How do you manage it all? I honestly don't. I have an amazing, supportive husband who manages life and who manages home and his work. but I manage business and I enjoy entrepreneurship and growing in my career. And I know my son's safe with my husband, and he's bringing him up to be a fine young man.
Thanks for
I
sharing.
want to add here. I want to add here, if possible, to Sandhya's notes, and I really embrace what both of you said, Huiyi and Sandhya. But the last point about how you manage, and the truth is, we cannot manage without support. We cannot manage without help. It's not cannot be all on our shoulders. I've been a daughter for third generation of women entrepreneurs. And I'm, very proud of that. So I didn't have this. I knew that this is like in my lifeblood, this state of mind of entrepreneurship. So so I became an entrepreneur within organization, but that's what I do. I do create things like from the start. And for years, I got the same feedback from society, from the society around me. How you manage, what you do with the kids, who feed them, when they are hungry or they don't do homework, whom they call. Do they call their father? Do they call their mother? But in fact, that's our business, and but it's not just our business as a home. The sharing of duties in the family, but it's also this societal support that you need around us. And I think that's the big discussion. Women's Day is not just about Women's Day, but it's about family unit sharing, equally sharing, or non-equally sharing, but sharing duties in the family, and then the support around you with kindergartens or any help you could get, whether it is your mother or his mother or the neighbor or the cleaner. It doesn't matter. The truth is that the balance does not exist. But I don't believe that the balance really exists, but I do believe that there is this integration of life of work. And if that's your ambition, that's your passion to be an entrepreneur, you're totally entitled to do that and to pursue that with your full heart and body and mind.
Yeah, I think balance is hard. What you mentioned, when somebody asks me, how do you balance? I'm like, no, I don't balance. I am lopsided towards career and work.
Right.
And family is kind of here, right? So it's lopsided this way. It's more heavy on the career and work, honestly. But you just make it work. And I've had questions like, oh, do you feel guilty? And I said, guilty for what? I chose this path, right? I chose to have a kid. I chose to have a family. But I also chose to start a business and be an entrepreneur and spend more time and more effort on my business. But I chose it. It was a conscious decision. And what should I feel guilty about? Don't try to make me guilty. But honestly, I don't feel guilty about it. I think, kids grow up as long as you give them a loving, nurturing environment. And, schools are great. The home atmosphere is great. It doesn't really mean that the mother or the father, or especially the mother, needs to always be there with the child, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up, right? Because implicit in that question, there is this assumption that, it should be the top priority for the woman to be their children, right? Like human children, not the career, not the business that they're starting. But nobody really asks that question for successful male entrepreneurs, right? Nobody says like, hey, do you ever feel bad for missing out on, your kids' birthdays or your kids' school events, etc., right? So I think that is something that we certainly also need to challenge. So I think it's been very inspiring hearing from all three of you how you're trying to build something better, right, for the future, not just for your children, but for the next generation. So kind of wanted to dive further deeper into that. And for Sandhya, I'm wondering if you could share with us, how you're lowering that cost of your cultivated shrimp, right, and kind of what else needs to happen to bring it to consumers' plates in end 2022.
Just a little bit of time for us. That's all. we know how to do it. We just need a little bit of time because it's biology. We can't get ourselves to just adapt overnight to everything else. Shrimp cells, they are live things, and they just need a bit of time, like us, to adopt and adapt. It's pretty much like bringing up a kid. I'm equating back to a kid, but it takes a while to kind of change them from mother's milk or bottled formula into solid food. That's literally what it is. So one of the key cost drivers for us is the liquid nutrient mix that we feed ourselves, which is called media. In scientific language, I call it nutrient soup. But literally the soup right now is made by pharmaceutical companies, so you can imagine that it's pricey and it's not edible. So we're converting this into plant-based edible liquid nutrient soup, literally soup for the cells. And then eventually humans can actually drink it as well. That, it's made up of plants, plant extracts, carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, and so on. And that's what brings down the cost. So we used to be a 5-digit cost for a kilogram. Now we are closer to, so we used to be about $10,000 a kilogram when we started off. In 2.5 years, we've come down to $3,500 a kilogram right now. And we're soon on the way to getting to the $50, which will be kind of the starting price point, which I think is affordable at this point.
Great. And I mean, in terms of that nutrient soup price coming down, that's clearly a key challenge that a lot of people in the industry are trying to solve. I think on the other end is also the consumer, right? So how would the consumer, react to the notion of something that seems unnatural, right? Growing shrimp in a lab, and how do you get them to embrace that future?
Sure. So I think two kind of answers to that. One is Asia has definitely surprised us with the interest in these kind of products and the new future for food. So we just published a new research that we did, and a survey and a research that we did on Singapore consumers. So we had 850 survey respondents. They were kind of divided among all the demographics, male, female, different age groups, different ethnicities that we have in Singapore. So we kind of divided it, and we found out that 78% of them are interested and want to try cell-based meats. That's the highest ever adopter number that we have ever seen in all the surveys that's been done around the world. The maximum I think that's gone is about 52% in the US or something like that. So 78 is huge. That means people are ready, they're looking for it. And the key reasons for them looking for alternative sources of protein and seafood is sustainability and environmental reasons. So this is what they're worried about. They're worried about where their food comes from, how it's made, and how it's going to be there for their future and their kids' future. The second part to that is, I have a counter question for that. Most of the food that we eat nowadays is processed. Either it's packaged food, which is processed, or so 80% of the shrimps that we consume right now are farmed as well. They're not wild caught. They're not from the ocean. They have been initially set up in a lab. Again, the farm, the aquaculture was set up in a lab, then taken to a large scale facility like a mangrove, or, set up like a farm of sorts where water is available. So all your processed food has definitely seen the light of a lab initially. It was all formulated in a lab. It was all made in the lab. It was tested in the lab, and eventually went into a food manufacturing facility that's food safe, and it's gone in, converted into a product. Of course, in our case also, we can't grow all the meats in the lab. We don't have enough space, and that's not enough to feed even the 4 of us that's here, right? So the research is done in a lab. So that's why, when somebody calls it lab-grown meat, I immediately go and correct them. No, it's not lab-grown. It's cell-based, cultured, cultivated, you want to call whatever it is, but it's not lab-grown, because eventually the technology goes into a food-safe manufacturing facility, and what you're getting is actual food, real meat, not even, substitute meat or anything like that. It's actual real meat. If you do DNA testing on it, it will tell you that it's real shrimp, right? So that's the beauty of this technology.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something that Ilanit shared with me previously, right? Which is that, people want things that are natural, right? But actually, the more natural you want things to be, the more technology has to be involved, right? Because as consumers, we're very used to convenience. We're used to the notion of there being a lot of innovative or new, foods, right? Different flavors. But really, it all starts somewhere, in a lab, right? With some kind of research being done around it. So with that, I'd like to throw the question to Ilanit to ask her, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see in alternative alternative protein that you're excited about, right? Especially since you're leading the Novozymes protein effort.
Well, it is one of the most interesting topics now in the agri-food value chain, or the agri-food of the whole area, or the all new set of opportunities. And I'm really happy that, you know, I'm a part of this movement of the ag protein. I think that we are just scratching the surface now. We just started in this domain of alternative proteins. And what I see is actually like 3 generations, but also like new opportunities in different directions that I will explain. When I'm looking into generations, then generation 1 is about plant-based, it's about biomimicry, it's about looking at plants as for consumers' values like muscle buildings, like weight management, to close hunger. And it's about mostly taste and texture of food, replacing taste and texture of food like dairy, like meat, like eggs, like the kitchen basics, right? That's generation 1. The generation 1 has already moved on. It's there. I think there are still a lot to do here. But the market from technology point of view moved to the next and the next generations. The second generation that I see is the mycelium based, so the microprotein, the fungal based proteins, and where you see over there how this area is actually solving the problems of plant based, but be it texture and texture and flavor, because mycelium, so fungi are really similar to meat in texture, to meat in flavor, the umami flavor. But it's also, if it is processed by or produced by fermentation, then you got a cleaner version, you've got a more nutritious version of plant-based. So I see mycelium based foods as the next generation, and that's as an evolution of this industry. And then there is the third generation, and I think which is the cultured, and I won't say lab-based, but a cultured-based foods, which is not only meats and fish and so on, but it's richer. It has also dairy and egg and so on, which is the acceleration of this field is tremendous, is really huge. I mean, we're going to have unlike what many companies and many also investors thought, that it's going to take a decade till products will reach the market. It actually, within, I would say, 18 months, we're going to see products in the market. It's not going to be commercial in 18 months, but we are going to see market tests of products worldwide in this area of culture-based foods, which means that the opportunity here is huge. It's coming, and Novozymes, as well as other companies who are working in this field, should help and accelerate this opportunity with the knowledge of biotech and fermentation processes and so on. And then there is also the whole area of the science of protein, which I think we just began in the understanding of the science of protein, because there is protein are used for medicines, they are used for health, are used for people performance, for human performance, not only for muscle buildings, but also for skincare and so on. Collagen is a protein and so on. So I think that you look at the map of the trends and sort of that's a huge, massive space of opportunities out there under this, one title of alt proteins.
Great, that's a very comprehensive overview, and I think certainly a lot of people don't recognize or realize, right, that a lot of the products that we consume, even for like some skincare, right, there's also new proteins that are being formulated that are going in, right? It's replacing products that were of animal origin, but again, people didn't really recognize that. And thinking about just markets, right? Obviously, China is a huge market with a massive consumer base that is also very young, right? And increasingly also well-educated and, interested in all kinds of novel things. So I wonder if we could tap on Huiyi's market research here to find out a little bit more, right? What would it take for the Chinese consumer to embrace alternative proteins?
Yeah. So I think that for Chinese consumers, I think the young consumers are adventurous. They're willing to try out new trends. Oatly took off very well in the Chinese market in the way that they partnered the channels to really bring the product into new occasions, new ways of combinations with coffee and so on. So I think that there definitely is potential for the segment to grow. But I think that there needs to be a lot more consideration, or also the trajectory in which the Chinese consumer currently has the awareness level, and how do you convert from general category awareness into actual trial. Means that they have to overcome certain obstacles. For example, the fear that foods are being the food is too over processed. The nutritional value is not the same as conventional protein, and the texture, the taste doesn't match up to conventional protein when you're having a craving for it. Right, so there are certain obstacles that we need to overcome when we want to get into the consumer's first trial, and then ensure that the experience is really living up to the promise of the category. Because right now in China, there are many new products coming out, and there's also a large variety in the quality of products which are hitting the market. And the way that it's presented, whether it's prepared by professionals or it's prepared by the consumers themselves, it also makes a difference in the consumer experience of the whole product. And once they have that experience, will lead to a repurchase. So we're really seeing in the whole consumer journey, how do you impact and influence into a purchase, into a trial, and then a repurchase. It takes a certain understanding of how do you motivate the consumer to do that. And so I think brands who really want to penetrate the market need to understand which are the consumer segments which are really have high potential to grow, and then what are the motivation obstacles and factors driving these different consumer segments.
So is the primary motivation or concern for the consumers more on the cost side, or do you think they can be pushed on the sustainability front to justify the premiums?
I think that it depends. Right now, the cost of it is also at different levels, right? We have imported products coming in at a very high premium compared to conventional, maybe up to 2 times or more. Domestically produced products with locally grown brands are maybe at half of that, of a price premium compared to conventional. So I think the price premium is definitely one of the obstacles which will be a barrier for wider consumption and trial and repurchase, because you may try it once, but can you really afford to have it regularly? So I think that price premium is definitely a point, but besides the price premium itself, the whole experience of it and understanding more about the benefits of it is going to be very important as well.
Great, and I wanted to call about Ilanit again because you've got such diverse experiences working in the large food businesses, right, that are feeding a lot of people in a lot of countries across different price points as well. So for large corporates, how do they approach innovation systematically, right? How do you build a system where you can consistently have that innovation flywheel turning to provide people with the products of the future?
You've got only small questions. Easy to answer. That's again a very challenging question. I think there was, for many years, corporations where multinationals were really focused on their own R&D teams, where they did some kind of internal scientific work. It's mostly, as I said before, it's more like an implementation of knowledge and not really like deep science or exploration phase. And they used to rely on marketing teams to define what type of products should be they should bring to the market. But actually, when we look at what happened in the food industry and how the food industry evolved, then these this process arrive to its end. Corporations cannot rely anymore only on internal innovations, because it's very limited from the growth that it can bring, and it's also very limited to the understanding of consumers, which are really the value system is changing, and we see now new generations which are more tuned to sustainability, which are more tuned to nutrition, and which is not really where the roots of the industry are. So there's an internal conflict of values. Now, closing these gaps, meaning first that there is a gap to close, that there is a challenge to embrace. And it means that, at least what I've seen in the last couple of years, is the shift toward open innovation arms, or open venturing, or venturing units, meaning those units which develop this knowledge of how to approach the ecosystem and how to work together with all the parts of the ecosystem, be it startups, but also clients, and also universities and investors, which are part of the important part of the ecosystem, also from multinationals and so on. And I think what we see now is the shift from what used to be CVCs and what used to be internal innovations into a hybrid way of working, where it is more focused on building relationships and building partnerships, building collaborations, but bringing them into the hardcore of the or the heart of the operating system of the organization. That's what we're trying to build in Novozymes. That's what I also built with Dole. This division that is really not at the side of the organization. It's not niche. It's really at the center of the organization, with the massive, let's say, growth expectation. And it is building to satisfy both the growth of the organization and also the growth of the collaborator that you work with. So just to clarify this shift, this is not about a startup solving a problem for organization, but it's about growing together, a corporate and a startup with a clear vision, a shared vision in front of their eyes. And there is a specific knowledge and experience here in how to build the processes that will support this, and how to build the support within the organization that will allow this to happen, and how to answer the needs of both sides, be it startup, be it corporate, with the other, whether it's capital, engineering advice, scientific knowledge, lab access, all those the necessary components that will help both sides grow together. So I think that's the shift that the industry gone through, from only R&D, commercial understanding of products, to internal innovation units, to CVCs, to corporate venturing teams, which are kind of in between investment and innovation teams.
So it's a more collaborative model of innovating together, I suppose, as opposed to just trying to take over something and absorb it into the core entity.
That's right. That's right. That's how I see it. Time will prove if I was right or wrong, but that's how I see the evolution.
Great. So we're going to reach the end of our session pretty soon. So just a friendly reminder to the audience, if you have any burning questions, feel free to type it into the Q&A box, and we'll get around to answering the questions shortly. So the final question that I have is actually, again, to all three of you, how can we ensure that innovations in agri-food tech also benefit the masses, right? That it's something that it's not just the limit or restricted to maybe the more well-to-do consumers who can afford certain premiums, but how do we make it more accessible? So I don't know who wants to start first.
I can go first. I think all of us have the vision of making it affordable for everybody. The idea is that the mass population is able to consume cell-based, plant-based, and alternative proteins, and does not need to lean towards conventional meat or seafood or dairy for that matter in the future. But of course, it's such an innovative new technology that it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get to that pricing. It's similar to us having internet now. I mean, even 10 years back or even 15 years back, I think, yeah, 15 years back, we didn't have internet on our fingertips. We didn't have it everywhere. When I was growing up, we still have the, the dial-up modem system where it used to take 15 minutes just to connect to the internet, and then a choppy internet and so on. But now it's like we can't think of lives without internet, right? If there's a 1 minute disruption, we get irritated and angry. So that's kind of what it is. I mean, just thinking about the internet, it was super expensive. Not everybody used to afford it. We used to have internet cafes where you used to pay per hour to like go access your emails or, chat or something like that. But now it's what everybody has. Everybody around the world has access to internet, almost, I would say. So it's kind of like that, right? So you start off with a premium niche product in a niche market, but eventually the idea is that we feed the entire world, and the whole concept of cell-based meats and alternative protein is for feeding the growing population, which is going to be 10 billion in the next couple of years. So that's the whole thing. So it's just time. It's economies of scale. It's allowing the industry to mature a little bit more and allowing consumers to buy and rebuy. That is going to bring down the costs for any new technology, including alternative protein.
The only thing that I have to add here, and thank you, Sandhya, I think that was very clear, and I totally agree, is that looking at accessibility also from another angle, and that's the cultural accessibility. When you look at the world of proteins, so for now, till now, plant-based proteins has been usually a waste type of, let's say the new generation is based on pea proteins, yellow proteins, and green proteins, and which is really more like a waste type of view. While in the East, soy-based protein has always been there. This is definitely not a new phenomenon. So now if you understand that, then you do understand that we need to, if we work in Asia, and I've been working only 1.5 years in Asia, and this has been, I would say, a life-changing experience, being exposed to different cultures and different needs. So when you look at accessibility, then I would expect different type of protein sources which are more adapted to Asian consumers as well as to other places in the world, right? That's so when I look at accessibility, it's the cost, but it's also the cultural relevance.
Yeah, I just like to add on that also. I think from the consumption point, it also is in the form, and that it really it's not a segment on its own. Alternative protein comes in as an ingredient, but how it is used really also can definitely leverage on the larger trends which are happening in the food industry. So for example, we look at the occasion, the scenarios in which people consume, whether it's as a snack or as a home preparation during COVID, when people don't go out, when people are living in single, smaller households instead of large extended families. How do people prepare food? How do people have relationships with food? And where does it fit into at the meal times of the day? What do they look for at different meal times? In breakfast, maybe it's a more balanced nutrition. At night, you want a lighter meal. You don't want something too heavy and too calorie filling. So these also come in to influence whether people can accept or would embrace products which fit into also what they're looking for in food as in their whole lifestyle habits, and the form in which is presented and the way that it fits into dietary habits, which also do change, is very important.
Those are all fantastic points. So, clearly we've got the sort of engineering or the science part of it, right? Trying to get the distribution wider, scaling it. And then, as both Ilanit and Huiyi mentioned, it's also the context, right? Like the cultural context, having the right kind of flavors, and also the right form factors, right, for the consumer to want to and be able to easily engage with the product. So I wanted to move to the questions coming in from our audience members. There's one that I think maybe Sandhya would be best placed to answer, which is in terms of the food science labor force, right, in Asia. Do we have sufficient talent to work on the alternative protein industry in Asia? And is the regulatory environment supportive enough for the industry to evolve further?
Sure. So if you're talking about food science, yes, we have enough. But if you're talking about food science who can think stem cells, or stem cell scientists who can think food, we don't. And so I can answer for the second part, which is the company that I run, is we are sitting in the midst of pharma and food. So we're learning from pharma, but converting that technology into food, which is very interesting, right? So everything from do we do GMP versus which ISO versus which HACCP, which safety protocols do we follow? Do we follow pharma, which is extremely high grade and expensive, versus food, which is not so expensive, not so high grade? So where do we we're sitting in the middle. It's hard to find good talent for either side. We either find really, really good stem cell scientists, we find really, really good food science and food tech people, and then we bring them on board and we get them to talk to each other. Both of them don't understand each other for the first couple of months, then they start understanding, then they start thinking differently. Stem cell scientists, when they're ordering one reagent or one chemical, they're like, will I eat this? If I will eat this, then maybe I should buy it. If I feel that I shouldn't be eating this, then let's not buy this. Let's find an alternative to that. That's how we get our team to think. We are like, whatever you're ordering, will you eat it? Will you be able to eat it? Or do you have an alternative to that chemical or whatever ingredient it is? Do you have an alternative in a plant? If you're able to find it, go for that. Don't order this, because as scientists, we are trained to just order from the pharma companies, right? That's how we know where do we get our reagents from. It's from a pharma company. So that's kind of it. The second question is regulatory approval. I think Ilanit just mentioned that, cell-based meats will be soon there. It's actually there already in Singapore. So, just to let you know, Singapore is kind of the first country to come up with a regulatory framework for cell-based meats. First ever country in the world to approve a cell-based meat product. And right now it is sold in one restaurant in Singapore. This is a cell-based chicken product from a US company. It's sold exclusively to it's a members club restaurant, so it's sold to the members, but soon they're going to open it to the public. And you literally can make a reservation, go inside, pay whatever it is, and eat chicken that has not come from a dead chicken. So that's kind of that's happening already, but that, of course, it's going to take a couple of years to kind of move over that trajectory. And let's say all of the 6 million people in Singapore can eat it, and the rest of the world as well.
Great. And I know we're already past the 10 o'clock mark, but I just want to close off with one more question, I guess, that has come in. I think it marries two separate questions, but all revolving around the idea that I raised in the previous question around technology and equity, right? So I think Huiyi has dropped off, but for Ilanit, since in your previous role with Dole, you did look at more upstream technologies as well. What role do you think technology can play to alleviate food scarcity in developing countries? Like, how can we help the remainder of the wider population that right now are not being very well represented, right? So they are living below the poverty line, they have limited access to resources.
It's a shift that we need to do in the state of mind of food companies, and definitely multinationals, but more than multinationals, those multinationals which have headquarters in Asia, which Asia has a good representative in their revenue in the revenue pie. When I was at Dole, we were looking at poverty lines and poverty rates across Asia, and we were trying to develop more accessible food that will feed, that will cater to population in the poverty line. I think it was a try. I don't know. I cannot say, you know, now when being out of that, I cannot say if this worked or not, but I can say that we need a coalition of forces of companies to work together with governments in order to be able to develop those type of products and to reach to markets with the right products. It's not about adjusting an existing product, adjusting, I don't know, a Kit Kat. And selling it in Asia is in the right flavor. It's a totally different way of thinking from the needs of the population, and then designing a product and that could fit from cost points of view, but also from nutrition point of view, from cultural point of view, as we said before. So I don't think we're there yet. I hope that with COVID, we will see more shift toward those types of coalitions, because COVID actually exposed the fragility of this holistic system that we are part of, that is food and agriculture and sustainability and people's nutrition. They all belong to one system. But we're not there yet. We did not really connected the dots and connected the efforts in order to develop the right solutions that is needed out there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of work that has to be done, right, to, I think, refine solutions, but also ensure that there's the distribution. So that's something that, you know, we at Pinduoduo are also very interested in. We're kind of taking the approach of starting from the downstream, right, looking at just how do we ensure that what is being produced is being sufficiently distributed, right? Let's at least try to minimize the wastage there, and then slowly work our way through, right? Like, how do we enhance the midstream? And then on the upstream technologies, right? Like, what are the things that we can do that can improve productivity while also, you know, doesn't have to come at the cost of traditional farming, right? Maybe it's not a displacement, but it's just more of an enhancement, right? Or a change to their farming practices. So I see Sandhya has been very busy answering some of the questions that have come in last minute on our Q&A. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, Ilanit, for your sharing as well. So unfortunately, we have gone 6 minutes over time. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you all for still, you know, tuning in, joining us on this wonderful International Women's Day panel. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to our panelists as well for sharing their insights with us. So with that, I'd like to bring this event to a close. Wish you all a happy International Women's Day, and do remember to sort of, you know, be around, be supportive, and help the other women in your life, right? To help us bring forward this idea of a better and brighter food future. So with that, I'd like to wish all of you a very good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Simi. Good night.
Bye.